Good afternoon, or good morning still. Thank you for having us, Jose, MIT. I'm also part of the MIT community as a Legatum Fellow, which is a center for entrepreneurship in emerging markets, and also part of the Sloan School of Business. I'm the CEO of SOS Carbon, which is an MIT spinoff from the mechanical engineering department. And basically we started in 2018 with the mission to transform an environmental crisis into value chains. There we go. So again, we started in 2018, the R&D up to 2020 when we made the spinoff to now become an organization to be able to offer our technologies through the Caribbean to be able to mitigate one of the main issues that are arising from climate change in the Caribbean, which I will walk you through in a second, from seaweed invasions, and how we're using those environmental crises in order to obtain benefits and opportunities. Sorry, there's some lag here. So we're looking into three main issues. We have already been hearing the consequences and how climate change has been shaping up all over the world. Jennifer and also Pete gave us an amazing context, also in what it looks on the climate change perspective, what action should be done, and also some of the mechanisms that need to be increased, because from the changing our habits is not that easy, right? And we need to also look into possibly methods for carbon sequestration that are cost effective and that we can scale to the level that will have an impact into reducing our carbon footprint. The other one is, as I mentioned, seaweed invasions. And the third one is how we can employ cost-effective technologies. We have also walked through many processes that, sure, we're talking a lot about them, but they're not really the way to go forward. And they're not a way to scale and have an impact into the many problems that we're seeing at scale. So just to walk you through quickly, again, for some context, but we are well aware of the implications of climate change. So first, the heat waves, fires, right? Where, California, we have seen many of these issues everywhere. Floods. So 2 weeks ago, I traveled to the Caribbean, and out of nowhere, I couldn't be sleeping in my home because of just random rains that happened on that specific day. I had to sleep over my sister, but at least I was lucky enough to have a place to sleep. It's not the same reality as we're seeing everywhere else. And sargassum invasions. This is another way how climate change has been showing up in the Caribbean. Sorry, not sure. There's some lag with the slides and loading. No, can you go back? Forward, please. So here's a picture of one of the most beautiful beaches in the Caribbean, specifically in the Dominican Republic, and how seaweed has been invading our pristine ecosystem. It is not affecting tourism, which is one of the biggest revenue sources for the Caribbean, also for employment, but it's affecting the marine ecosystem, it's affecting human health. Once it invades the beaches, it rots and releases back the carbon and methane that it once captured. So that's where it comes, the carbon sequestration that I will be walking you through in a second. Can you go forward? So, can you go back? Okay, there we go. Now the pictures are loading. And our communities are the ones that are mostly impacted by the problem. This is another location in the Dominican Republic. You can see the size of the boats. And again, seaweed is just like killing everything throughout. Worse yet, it's affecting us all. And this year in USBI, President Biden approved a state of emergency because sargassum seaweed was getting on the desalination plant and the power plants of the island. And again, now we're not only seeing how these climate change consequences through the Caribbean are affecting tourism, but many other things that we are dependent on. Can you forward, please? So talking about ineffective methods, forward. We have been seeing how heavy machineries have been deployed to deal with this sargassum problem, only aggravating the damage, the environmental damage, creating beach erosion, and not solving the problem. Can you go forward? Again, sorry for can go back one. There's supposed to be another picture here, but anyway, so we're seeing how the heavy machineries is not just the one as you saw on the prior slide, but beaches are being turned into construction zones. Again, a country or some countries that are dependent up to 70% on tourism alone, we cannot be utilizing these type of practices. Forward. Likewise with other methods. For example, you might not notice it, but there is a barrier here in between all the seaweed. And what people have been trying to do is put these barriers to prevent the seaweed from making landfall. But what happened is that working in an ocean ecosystem, you have many other factors, apart from nature itself, but many other factors that complicate matters and make everything more costly and ineffective if the right mechanisms are not deployed. With that said, sargassum is being pushed on top of the barriers if they're depending on the waves and water conditions, but once it rots, even if you get to build a wall, then the sargassum will rot and go under the barrier. So unless you implement and actually focus on other systems, these type of things are useless. Likewise, there's supposed to be another picture here, but likewise it happens with carbon capture technologies, again, some of the ones that Jennifer mentioned about. And going from the prior slide on the topic of carbon capture, we see that still nowadays, prices for carbon capture technologies are above the 300, if not the 600 mark per ton of carbon sequester. So we need to be paying attention into where resources are being deployed. Here you go. So, you know, we make heavy investments going to the moon, exploring many different things, but as we have been talking, climate change is a yesterday problem that we need to be adapting, if not also mitigating. And we need to understand how those resources are best put in place so that we are not only prepared, but that we can transform this environmental crisis into opportunities. Forward, please. One more. Yeah, another one, please. So, just taking a step back, imagine here on this white slide, a beautiful Caribbean beach, because there you go. We can ensure that we go and secure that look. We can secure not only we keep our beaches and our main industries of tourism, but even now have new industries coming up from these environmental problems. Please. I am a mechanical engineer. And I wish I learned, obviously, as engineers, things are not always that simple. This is not that simple either, but I'm trying to simplify it. And I learned this formula from our advisor in the mechanical engineering department, Dr. Alex Slocum. And basically what we're saying here is the inverse of a problem, we can transfer it into an opportunity, or perhaps even many opportunities, as I will show you in a second. Can you go forward? Looking at the problem, so 1 over SAT, which is climate change, sargassum invasion, and ineffective methods or costly technologies, forward please, can transfer into climate change mitigation, sustainable tourism and sustainable environment, and social and economic development. Better yet, that gets to an exponential level if all the actors work together. And when I mean all the actors, it's not only academia, the corporate partners, but also policymakers, private sector in all these countries that we need to deploy the technologies at, in order to take that from a local effort into a global benefits. So we work in 3 main areas: services and licensing, value-add products, and carbon sequestration. Forward. So the first area, So the first area, which we started in 2018, is to, as you saw, the main problem is sargassum getting into the beaches of the Caribbean, right? So we started in 2018 with a focus on how to transform that, or how to avoid that problem in the first place. And again, our model is very simplified, as I show you with that formula. So our first step is to look into the existing infrastructure over these countries. What we saw was there is a vast network of artisanal fishermen vessels and a community desperate for formal employment, for formal opportunities, for them even to become part of this transition. We don't need to be inventing space rocket that only an MIT engineer can drive it. But perhaps we can also integrate the local communities that, again, are in a great appetite to also advance and be part of these solutions. And this is not only the case in the Caribbean, but everywhere else. So again, going to the Caribbean, we started collecting sargassum in the middle of 2 artisanal vessels. Can you go forward, please? That nowadays look like this: a hardware that we mount on the artisanal vessel and allow us for transforming or turning that artisanal vessel into a high-capacity harvester. And that hardware adapts to the different characteristics of the vessels. Because again, being artisanal on its own, we have different sizes and modularity. So that's one of the things that we were able to achieve without the need of modifying the vessels. Meaning we strapped the hardware without needing to modify it in any way. Can you go forward? So we have been collecting sargassum since last year, 2021, in the Dominican Republic, servicing the tourism industry. They pay us. Now we're also in Antigua and Barbuda, also through a licensing model in which the tourism industry is the one that does the day-to-day operation, and we do training, we provide the hardware, and we provide ongoing technical support. So we collect the sargassum as the boat drives through in these nets. At least the laser is working. So in these nets that we can take out right away. Go forward, please. And this is basically a time shot in which the ground operation was going a little bit slower than the sea operation, and that's why you see all these sargassum nets. Our team in the DR called them sausages. The team in Antigua and Barbuda didn't like that name, so we had to stick to nets. But anyway, so we pile them up as the ground operation takes them out. And basically what we're doing here is collecting as much as possible before it makes landfall or before it rots or decomposes and creates a bigger problem. Here you can see how we take them out right away, again, to a truck without needing much infrastructure. That's another benefit of the local artisanal vessels, that they can reach almost any point around the coastline, because we not only operate sometimes in a rocky area, other times in a beach area, other times we need to drive the nets to a extraction point. But what we don't need is a big marina or is another additional infrastructure to complete the process of an environmental sanitation. So here you can see a before and after. Obviously, as I mentioned, our work is to be proactive, chasing sargassum before it can make landfall. But sometimes we need to face bad weather, sometimes it comes at night, and that's another benefit of this system, that it has also a very shallow draft, and we can reach those locations even when sargassum has made landfall, taking it out as fast as possible before it rots and create a bigger problem. For that, again, we work with all the stakeholders. We work with the government, even though some of you might be asking if this should be a government work. But I think so too as well. I mean, they should be providing an emergency response when these environmental catastrophes are happening everywhere in the Caribbean. But anyways, we work with them. We even develop a permitting mechanism that wasn't in place before, and we are the only company with an environmental permit, and again, work closely with the different government agencies. Some comparison, other systems, conveyor-based, as you know, they have a lot of moving parts. Every moving part is just a cost, maintenance, another complication, and the cost for those other technologies are not in best use when we need to cover kilometers and kilometers of coastline. So our second area is how we can transform or how we can use the seaweed into value-add products. And we have been working with partners that process it into some components, all the way from liquid fertilizer or biostimulants to compost to bioplastics is a big one nowadays, to biochar, cosmetics, and pharma. I can keep going on. Now we're also developing our own R&D with partnerships, industrial doctorate or industrial PhD programs with the university in Spain, and partnerships throughout the Caribbean, not only in the Dominican Republic, because also, again, everyone plays a role here. And the academia is the first place so that we can get started at scale with the processing of this huge problem. This year, this is a picture of the first container that we shipped to Finland, to a company, a partner company that is using the seaweed for cosmetics and pharma. This year we shipped 5 containers, and we're just looking to increase those quantities until then we get to make the investments in the different areas of the Caribbean for a local processing. As you have seen throughout the presentation, we put a lot of attention not only into the environment itself, but also how to create a social impact, how to integrate the communities. Today we have trained more than 65 fishermen. We directly employ more than 20, and we have been empowering them to also learn how to even build our hardware, from the nets to also the aluminum hardware, and we plan to keep increasing those training programs. One more, there you go. So even though I'm here today with you, our amazing team is in the DR and in Antigua and Barbuda, giving their best day to day, because this is a day-to-day activity to ensure that the beaches of the Caribbean are pristine as you might know them through a Google search or anything. They always remain like that. One more. So just to summarize, and I will be going into the carbon sequestration technology in a second, but just to summarize what I have walked you through so far into the different opportunities that we see in front of us. So first we have the sargassum invasions, then we monetize it through a service or licensing to the tourism industry and local governments. Then we have the processing, and then even some of these products can also get us carbon capture. Yep. So now going into the third area, and that's, by the way, where our name comes from, SOS Carbon. Sargassum, or seaweed, ocean sequestration of carbon. Basically, there are different steps into achieving that process, but I will walk you through the two alternatives that we see in front of us for deployment. So the sargassum sausages that we harvest, we can take them to a barge that will be strategically docked, and from that barge, we use water pumps to sink the sargassum to a critical depth. So the barge will then be taken to the open ocean, in which the sargassum will be sink to a depth, first the critical depth of around 300 meters, and then from that point on, it keeps sinking on its own. And why sinking it? Because, as I mentioned earlier, when sargassum makes landfall, it releases back the carbon and methane. The oceans, in this case, can help us or act as a freezer to preserve the carbon and methane that the seaweed already absorbed. And the Caribbean is also a key for that, because you go out 5 to 20 kilometers, depending which country you're at, and you already have these huge valleys that are 5 kilometers deep. We only need 1 kilometer to ensure carbon sequestration. So the next step from that, instead of just transferring the harvest sargassum to a barge, we can do already in situ open ocean interception and sinking. And for that, again, as we get a sargassum mat, I will show you a picture in a second. As we get a sargassum mat, we suck it up with the pump, and then we use the pump to right away to sink it to the critical depth, at which point it keeps sinking on its own. And similarly to the artisanal vessels, even though this is obviously more complex, it's still been simple. Again, we only use one moving part, which is the pump. And water pumps are used everywhere for an array of different industries. Actually, we got this one shipped from New Jersey, from one of our supporting partners, Xylem. You might know them. But anyway, so we got like the biggest water pump shipped to the Dominican Republic, and we're able to carry on a full-scale pilot. So just going back, I guess, a second, here's when we started in 2019 with a submersible pump. Here it is. We had to put a generator in one of the DR Navy vessels. This is another way we work with the government. We work very closely with the DR Navy, again, integrating them. These other government agencies are in appetite of getting involved. They just sometimes don't have the resources, or sometimes don't have the capabilities of getting in these type of activities and programs. So this is when we validated the sargassum sinking with that submersible pump, in which we validated again that we can pump it to a critical depth, and then at which point it keeps sinking on its own. Here, these were part of our other R&D. Luckily, our advisor, Dr. Slocum, had some cool machines to play with at his farm, and we tried out different auger system to control the flow of the sargassum that we will be sucking, and then that way maximize efficiency of the pump and ensure the smooth operation. So here's the auger that we ended up using in the full-scale pilot. Keep going. Here's a full-scale pilot in the Dominican Republic. We spent more than 3 months in the DR, again, working alongside the DR Navy and ensuring and validating the efficiencies of this system for sinking the seaweed at scale. Can you go back one? So there you go. And obviously, R&D is not just about results, but also what you need to go through. This is just like 2 pictures of our process. We didn't have power in the Navy base, and we had to rent a generator, which we only had it for a short amount of time. So our days just got longer and longer to be able to deliver on the schedule. Next. Everything okay? No. There you go. So this is part of our team, another happy picture. Next. And talking about sargassum mats and how we can identify, in the open ocean, the sargassum to then go and chase it. So we did some particle models from the history of the sargassum and how it moves through the Caribbean. And then we were also able to identify through our partners some of the big mats in order to focus on those patches to go in situ and sink it. Can you go? Just for reference, I had a circle here, but this is a pickup truck down here. This is one of the sargassum mats. Imagine that hitting one of the small Caribbean countries. So again, as you can see, most of it is already covering all the shoreline. So again, this is a huge problem. And then imagine all these communities immigrating to other countries. Climate change is not only about what's happening to us, but then how the problems on those specific countries affect others. In 2020, more than 30 people immigrated only due to climate. The Caribbean population is 44 million. So imagine if just with one problem due to climate change, sargassum, the Caribbean doesn't have an economy anymore, or doesn't have a coastal ecosystem anymore. Imagine the pressure to the other countries that are not yet seeing the same level of negative impact. Go ahead. And to put some numbers in perspective, we have a academic publication which you can feel free to look for, but from the sargassum sinking, we can obtain only from 10% of sinking sargassum, 10% from the sargassum that makes landfall, we can sequester more than 2 million tons of carbon per year. If we go to all the sargassum, can you go next? All the sargassum that makes landfall, we can easily reach a gigaton scale under the 100 per dollar per ton of carbon to be sequestered. So this is the same chart that we saw earlier with the other technologies. So again, very easily and validated process on how to at scale obtain effective carbon capture. Next. And as I said, this is a team effort. From the beginning, we partner with different groups, organizations, all the way from the government, as I mentioned, the Navy, but also private institutions, like one of the largest bank, the Ministry of Tourism, and very well-known hotel chains. So this is a team effort to ensure not only that we solved the climate crises that we're facing, but also that we transform them into opportunities. And next. We have been speaking all over the Caribbean and internationally. Again, we appreciate MIT for hosting us today, but also we have been in Jamaica, Guadeloupe. I just came from Cuba last week in a meeting with the Association of Caribbean States. And now wrapping up, again, we work and collaborate with many other groups. I just want to leave you with this formula again. Obviously, it's not as simple, but it's a good reference that, depending how we see the problems and depending how we work on deploying solutions, we can not only, avoid those problems from affecting us, but rather also gain opportunities, gain financial benefits from those problems. Thank you, Jose, again, and any way that we can be of a support or linked to what you're doing and working on, more than happy to connect and take this conversation further. Thanks.